The phone call came just as Julia Adams was packing up her desk, ready to admit defeat. 3 months without a teaching position, rent due in a week, and her student loans looming like storm clouds. "Hello," she answered, trying to mask the desperation in her voice. "Is this Julia Adams?" "The English and literature tutor." The woman's voice was crisp, professional. "Yes, speaking." Julia straightened her posture reflexively, as if the caller could somehow see her through the phone. "This is Margaret Winters from Wellington Academy. We have an urgent situation with one of our senior students. I understand you've applied for our substitute teaching position, but I'm calling about something more immediate." 24 hours later, Julia found herself standing outside an imposing wrought iron gate, clutching her weathered leather satchel filled with teaching materials. The mansion beyond the gate sprawled across manicured grounds like something from a period drama. Her small Honda Civic looked embarrassingly out of place in the circular driveway as she parked beside a fountain depicting Greek gods. The intercom buzzed, and Julia identified herself with a voice that sounded steadier than she felt. The gate swung open silently, and she drove up the winding driveway, the gravel crunching beneath her tires. A stern-faced housekeeper met her at the door. "Mr. Elliot is away on business. I'm Mrs. Hendricks. The young master is in the library." She didn't wait for Julia to respond before turning on her heel and leading the way through the marble-floored entrance hall. Julia followed, taking in the high ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers, the original artwork on the walls, the elegant antique furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment. The library was a book lover's dream: 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves, rolling ladders, plush leather chairs, and a massive oak desk by the window. A teenage boy slouched in one of the chairs, headphones over his ears, his attention fixed on a gaming device in his hands. "Tyler, Mrs. Hendricks said sharply, "Your tutor is here." The boy Tyler didn't look up. Mrs. Hendricks cleared her throat loudly. "Tyler Elliot." With exaggerated slowness, Tyler removed his headphones and glanced up. Julia estimated him to be about 16, with sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead and dark eyes that held a mixture of boredom and defiance. "Another one," he said, his tone making it clear Julia was just the latest in a line of tutors who had failed to impress him. "Miss Adams will be working with you daily until your English and literature grades improve," Mrs. Hendricks said. "Your father was very clear about the consequences if they don't." "Whatever," Tyler muttered, returning his attention to his game. Mrs. Hendricks turned to Julia. "Mr. Elliot pays generously for results, Miss Adams. Tyler needs to pass his upcoming exams with at least a B average. The previous tutors were unable to motivate him." Her tone suggested Julia would likely fail as well. "You'll work with him from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday." "Any questions?" Julia had dozens, but she simply shook her head. "Good, I'll leave you to it then." With that, Mrs. Hendricks departed, the click of her heels fading down the hallway. Julia set down her bag and pulled up a chair across from Tyler. "So, Tyler, I'm Julia Adams. I understand you're having some trouble with English and literature." Tyler didn't look up. "I'm not having trouble, I'm just not doing it. May I ask why?" "Because it's pointless." Julia leaned forward slightly. "What are you reading in class right now?" "Some boring book about a guy who talks to a bird." Julia smiled despite herself. "Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven." Tyler shrugged, still focused on his game. "You know," Julia said, "Poe was actually one of the first American writers to try to make a living solely from writing. He was constantly broke, often starving, and died under mysterious circumstances, possibly murder." For a brief moment, Tyler's fingers paused over his game. "He also pioneered detective fiction," Julia continued. "Basically invented the genre. Without Poe, we wouldn't have shows like Criminal Minds or CSI." Tyler finally looked up. "So what? So maybe there's more to these boring works than you think. What games do you play?" Tyler held up his device. "Mostly RPGs, some strategy games." "Games with stories, then." "Good stories matter, don't they? They make the game worth playing, I guess." Julia reached into her bag and pulled out her tablet. "I have an idea. Let's look at The Raven as if it were a psychological horror game." The protagonist is essentially trapped in his own mind, haunted by loss and grief, possibly descending into madness. For the first time, Tyler looked genuinely interested. That's not how our teacher explained it. Well, there are many ways to approach literature. Finding your way in is what matters. By the end of the session, Tyler had reluctantly engaged with the poem, even reading a few stanzas aloud when Julia challenged him to give them the dramatic weight they deserved. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was a start. As Julia packed up her things, Tyler asked, "So you're coming back tomorrow?" "That's the plan." "Is that okay with you?" Tyler shrugged, but there was less hostility in the gesture. "Whatever, just don't expect miracles." "I don't believe in miracles," Julia said with a smile. "I believe in hard work and finding the right approach. See you tomorrow, Tyler." Mrs. Hendricks appeared to escort Julia out. As they walked through the house, Julia asked, "Is there anything specific I should know about Tyler's situation? It would help me tailor my approach." Mrs. Hendricks hesitated. Mr. Elliot lost his wife Tyler's mother 3 years ago, cancer. Tyler was close to her. Since then, he's been through several schools and many tutors. Mr. Elliot is demanding when it comes to his son's education. Julia nodded, understanding more of what she was dealing with. And Mr. Elliot travels often for business. His work takes him all over the world. He's very successful. There was a note of pride in Mrs. Hendricks' voice. He built his shipping company from nothing. At the door, Mrs. Hendricks handed Julia a sealed envelope. "Your first week's payment in advance. Mr. Elliot believes in compensating people well." Julia was stunned when she opened the envelope in her car. The amount was triple what she would have earned at Wellington Academy for a full week of substitute teaching. Over the next 2 weeks, Julia arrived each day at the same time, gradually building a rapport with Tyler. She discovered he was intelligent but unmotivated, harboring a deep resentment toward his father's frequent absences and high expectations. "He wants me to take over the company someday," Tyler confided during their 3rd session. "Says it's my legacy or whatever." "And what do you want?" Julia asked. Tyler seemed surprised by the question. "No one's asked me that before. I'm asking now." "I don't know, game design maybe. I like creating worlds more than living in this one." Julia nodded. "That's a start. You know, a lot of game design requires strong narrative skills. Understanding story structure, character development, emotional arcs, all things we study in literature." Tyler considered this. "My dad would never go for it. One step at a time. First, let's get your grades up. Then we can think about how to approach your father with your interests." As days turned into weeks, Tyler began completing assignments on time, participating in class discussions, and even reading ahead in some cases. Julia introduced creative ways to connect literature to his interests, having him design character profiles for Shakespearean figures or create alternative endings to classic stories in game format. It was nearly a month into their arrangement when Julia first encountered Adam Elliot. She arrived for her usual session to find the library empty. Confused, she was about to seek out Mrs. Hendricks when she heard raised voices coming from behind a partially closed door across the hall. "It's my life," Tyler's voice carried clearly, "which you seem determined to waste." The deeper voice must belong to his father. "Do you have any idea what I've built for you? The opportunities you have? Opportunities to be exactly like you?" "No thanks." Julia hesitated, uncomfortable at overhearing the private argument but unwilling to interrupt. "Your tutor seems to be having some impact on your grades at least," the man said, his tone slightly less confrontational. "Julia actually listens to me," Tyler shot back. "She doesn't just tell me what to do all the time." There was a pause then. "We'll continue this discussion later. I have calls to make." Julia quickly moved back toward the library entrance, pretending to have just arrived as the door across the hall swung open. A tall man emerged, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. He wore a tailored suit that accentuated his athletic build, his dark blonde hair neatly combed back from a face that featured a strong jawline and intense blue eyes. Those eyes landed on Julia with startling focus. "You must be Miss Adams," he said, striding toward her with his hand extended. "Adam Elliot," Julia shook his hand, noting his firm grip. Yes, Mr. Elliot, it's nice to finally meet you. Likewise, I understand you've made more progress with my son in a few weeks than the last 3 tutors combined. Tyler is very bright, Julia said. He just needed to find his connection to the material. Adam studied her with interest. Most people lead with flattery about my business or my home when we first meet. You lead with praise for my son. Julia met his gaze steadily. I'm here to teach Tyler, not network with you, Mr. Elliot. To her surprise, Adam's serious expression broke into a genuine smile. Refreshing, Mrs. Hendricks speaks highly of you as well. Tyler appeared in the doorway behind his father, looking sullen. Seeing Julia, his expression lightened slightly. We should get started, Julia said, gesturing toward the library. Adam nodded. By all means, perhaps I could join you briefly. I'd like to observe your approach. Dad, Tyler protested. Just for a few minutes, Adam assured him. Julia looked to Tyler, leaving the decision to him. After a moment, Tyler shrugged. Whatever. The session was tense at first, with Tyler clearly uncomfortable under his father's scrutiny. Julia decided to change tactics. Today, I thought we'd analyze song lyrics as poetry, she announced, pulling up a presentation on her tablet. Tyler mentioned you're a fan of classic rock, Mr. Elliot. Adam looked surprised. Did he? Tyler appeared equally confused. No, I didn't, Julia smiled. The vintage concert posters in your room gave it away. Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones. I noticed them when we moved our session there last week while the library was being cleaned. Adam turned to his son with raised eyebrows. You have good taste, I guess, Tyler mumbled, but Julia could see he was pleased by his father's approval. Many song lyrics stand as poetry in their own right, Julia continued, displaying the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven on her tablet. I thought we could analyze the literary devices, metaphors, and themes in some of these classics, then compare them to contemporary music Tyler enjoys. For the next 30 minutes, Julia guided them through an analysis that had both father and son engaged, occasionally finding common ground in their interpretations. Adam proved to be insightful and well-read, while Tyler revealed his understanding of symbolism and metaphor was stronger than his school performance suggested. When Adam finally excused himself to take a business call, the atmosphere in the library relaxed noticeably, but something had shifted between father and son. Your dad knows a lot about literature, Julia observed. Tyler nodded. Mom was an English professor before I was born. I guess she rubbed off on him. The revelation gave Julia a new perspective on Adam Elliot, not just a demanding businessman, but a man who had loved a woman who loved books. Over the next few weeks, Adam began appearing more frequently during Julia's sessions, sometimes just to say hello, other times staying longer to participate in discussions. She learned he had rearranged his travel schedule to be home more often, ostensibly to monitor Tyler's progress. One Friday afternoon, Julia arrived to find Tyler with a slight fever. Mrs. Hendricks insisted he rest, and Julia prepared to leave early. Miss Adams, Adam called, catching her in the foyer. A moment, if you don't mind. He led her to his home office, a space that reflected his personality, organized, tasteful, with subtle displays of achievement rather than ostentatious showing off. I wanted to thank you, he said, gesturing for her to sit. Tyler's latest progress report shows remarkable improvement. He's doing the work, Julia said. I'm just providing guidance. You're providing much more than that. Tyler talks about your sessions at dinner now. He hasn't voluntarily spoken about school in years. Julia smiled. He's passionate about storytelling, you know. He has a creative mind. Adam sighed, running a hand through his hair in a rare display of vulnerability. I'm aware I've been inflexible about his future. After his mother died, I became obsessed with securing his path. Catherine would have handled this so much better. I think you're being too hard on yourself, Julia said gently. Grief affects everyone differently. Adam looked at her with surprise, as if unused to being offered compassion rather than deference. Perhaps, he conceded. In any case, since you won't be tutoring today, would you consider joining me for lunch? I'd like to discuss Tyler's progress in more detail. Julia hesitated. Something in the way Adam looked at her suggested this might be more than a professional meeting, and she was conscious of maintaining appropriate boundaries. "I think that would be fine," she finally said. "As long as we focus on Tyler's education." Adam smiled. "Of course." They drove separately to a small, elegant restaurant overlooking the bay. Julia was grateful she'd worn one of her nicer outfits that day, a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. Still, she felt underdressed compared to the other diners. Adam must have sensed her discomfort. "I chose this place for the view and the privacy, not the pretension," he said as they were seated at a window table. "Most of these people are more concerned with being seen than with enjoying their meal." The observation made Julia laugh, and some of her tension eased. Their conversation began with Tyler but gradually expanded to books they'd both read, places they'd traveled, and their personal philosophies on education. Julia found Adam to be thoughtful and articulate, with a dry wit that emerged when he felt comfortable. "May I ask how you became a tutor?" Adam inquired as they finished their main course. "You clearly have a gift for it." Julia hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Necessity, initially. I was a high school English teacher until my school faced budget cuts. I've been trying to find a permanent position, but in the meantime, tutoring pays the bills." She smiled ruefully, "Or at least most of them." "You should be teaching full-time," Adam said with conviction. "Tyler's school would be lucky to have you." "That's kind of you to say, but teaching positions are competitive." "Perhaps I could make a call. I'm on the board at Wellington." Julia shook her head firmly. "I appreciate the thought, but I want to earn a position based on my qualifications, not connections." Adam studied her with renewed interest. "Your integrity is remarkable, Julia. May I call you Julia?" "Of course. And please call me Adam." Their eyes met across the table, and Julia felt a flutter of something unexpected in her chest. Adam Elliott was not just wealthy and handsome. He was complex, intelligent, and deeply committed to his son despite his missteps. As a single father navigating grief and the challenges of raising a teenager, he was doing his best, and now he was trying to do better. The moment was interrupted by Adam's phone buzzing. He glanced at it apologetically. "I should take this. Business never stops, I'm afraid." As he stepped away to take the call, Julia gazed out at the water, wondering at the strange turn her life had taken. A month ago, she was desperately applying to every teaching position within 50 miles. Now she was having lunch with one of the wealthiest men in the city, developing feelings she hadn't expected and wasn't sure how to handle. Adam returned looking troubled. "I apologize, but I need to cut our lunch short. There's an issue at the Shanghai office that requires my attention." "Of course," Julia said, reaching for her purse. Adam waved her off. "Please, lunch is my treat, and there's something else. I may need to travel next week. Would you be willing to extend your sessions with Tyler? Perhaps 3 hours in the morning as well as your usual afternoon time. I'd adjust your compensation accordingly." "I can do that," Julia agreed, pushing aside her disappointment at the thought of Adam leaving just as they were beginning to connect. "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "I've enjoyed our conversation tremendously, Julia. Perhaps we could continue it when I return." Julia smiled. "I'd like that." The following Monday, Julia arrived early for her extended session with Tyler. Mrs. Hendricks informed her that Adam had left for China the previous evening. "He asked me to give you this," she said, handing Julia an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "Julia, thank you for agreeing to the additional hours. Tyler respects you, which is no small accomplishment. I look forward to continuing our conversation when I return." Adam, the note was accompanied by a book, a first edition of Pride and Prejudice, which Julia had mentioned was her favorite novel during their lunch. "He had it delivered by courier yesterday," Mrs. Hendricks said with a knowing look, "before he left." Julia's cheeks warmed as she carefully placed the book in her bag. Tyler was surprisingly cooperative during their extended sessions. "Dad said if I keep my grades up, he'll consider letting me take a game design course this summer," he confided on Wednesday. "That's wonderful," Julia said, genuinely pleased. "See, communication works." Tyler shrugged, but he seemed happier than she'd seen him before. He's different lately, less, I don't know, robotic, Julia smiled. People can change when they realize what's important. He talks about you, you know, Tyler said casually, pretending to focus on his assignment. Asks what we do in our sessions, if you've mentioned any books you like. Does he? Julia tried to sound neutral, but her pulse quickened. Yeah, it's kind of obvious he's into you. Tyler, it's cool, he interrupted. You're not like the women he usually dates. They're all fake. You're real. Julia wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she redirected their conversation back to Macbeth and the essay Tyler needed to complete. Adam's business trip extended from 1 week to 2. He called Tyler every evening, and occasionally Julia would receive a text message asking about his son's progress or recommending a book he thought she might enjoy. Each message was professional, but carried an undercurrent of personal interest that both thrilled and confused her. Was she reading too much into his attentions? Would her feelings jeopardize her position as Tyler's tutor? The questions circled in her mind as she drove to the Elliott home for her Friday afternoon session, exactly 2 weeks after Adam's departure. To her surprise, his sleek black Audi was parked in the driveway. Mrs. Hendricks met her at the door. Mr. Elliott returned early this morning. He and Tyler are in the garden. Julia found them engaged in an impromptu basketball game on the court behind the house, both laughing as Tyler successfully blocked his father's shot. Adam's suit had been replaced by jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that revealed muscular arms she hadn't known existed under his tailored clothing. Julia, Tyler called out, waving. Adam turned, his face lighting up at the sight of her. You're early, he said, walking over to greet her. Actually, I'm right on time, she replied with a smile. Then I've lost track of time, Adam said, his eyes warm as they met hers. It's good to see you. You too. How was your trip? Productive. I managed to restructure our Asian operations to require less direct oversight from headquarters. Meaning? Julia asked. Meaning I'll be traveling less frequently, Adam explained, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I've realized there are more important things requiring my attention at home. Tyler rolled his eyes behind his father's back, making Julia struggle to maintain a straight face. Well, she said, we should probably start our session. Actually, Adam said, I thought we might try something different today. Tyler mentioned you've been discussing the old man and the sea in your sessions this week. Julia nodded. It's part of his assigned reading. I have a boat, Adam said. I thought perhaps the three of us could take it out this afternoon, experience the themes of the novel more directly. Tyler's expression brightened. Seriously, we haven't used the boat in forever, Julia hesitated. It's a lovely idea, but I'm not sure it counts as tutoring. Consider it experiential education, Adam suggested. Besides, Tyler's latest quiz scores were excellent. I think you've both earned a change of scenery. Against her better judgment, Julia agreed. An hour later, she found herself on Adam's elegant sailboat, feeling the wind in her hair as they navigated away from the marina. Adam handled the vessel with confident ease while Tyler explained what he'd learned about Hemingway's use of symbolism and the novel's themes of perseverance. The old man keeps going despite repeated failures, Tyler said. Kind of like me with English class before Julia came along. Adam laughed. A surprisingly apt comparison. As the afternoon progressed, Julia observed the easy interaction between father and son, so different from the tension that had characterized their relationship when she first arrived. Tyler was more animated, and Adam listened attentively to his son's ideas instead of imposing his own. When Tyler became absorbed in watching a pod of dolphins that appeared alongside the boat, Adam moved to sit beside Julia. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For showing me how to connect with my son again, for seeing his potential when I was only focusing on his failures. You're giving me too much credit, Julia protested. You both just needed time and the right circumstances. You created those circumstances, Adam insisted. You've changed our lives, Julia. Not just Tyler's education, our relationship, our home. It feels like a family again. The word family hung in the air between them, laden with meaning. I care about both of you, Julia admitted softly. more than I probably should as Tyler's tutor. Adam's hand found hers on the bench between them. And I care about you far more than I should as your employer. Their eyes met, and Julia felt the same connection she'd experienced during their lunch, only stronger now, more certain. What happens now? She asked. That depends, Adam said, his voice low and sincere. Tyler's grades have improved to the point where he no longer needs daily tutoring, which means there's no professional conflict if I ask you to dinner not as Tyler's father, but as a man who finds himself thinking about you constantly. Julia's heart raced. In that case, I accept. Their first official date took place the following evening at Adam's home. Mrs. Hendricks had the night off, and Adam cooked dinner himself, a surprisingly delicious pasta dish he claimed was the only recipe he'd mastered. Catherine insisted I learn to cook at least one meal properly, he explained as they sat on the terrace, the garden lights twinkling around them. She said no one should be completely dependent on others for basic needs, no matter how wealthy they become. She sounds like a remarkable woman, Julia said. She was. Adam's expression was reflective rather than pained. She would have liked you very much. You share her passion for literature and her ability to see the best in people. As weeks turned into months, Julia and Adam's relationship deepened. Tyler, far from being uncomfortable with the development, seemed pleased by it. Does this mean you'll stick around even though I'm getting better grades now? He asked Julia one afternoon as they worked on his college application essays. Is that what you're worried about? That I'll disappear once you don't need tutoring? Tyler shrugged, attempting to appear casual. I mean, whatever, Julia smiled. I'm not going anywhere, Tyler. Not unless you and your dad want me to. Dad definitely doesn't want that, Tyler said with a grin. He's totally in love with you. It's kind of gross, but also kind of cool. Julia felt her cheeks warm. We care about each other very much. Care, Tyler mimicked, making air quotes. Right. 6 months after their first meeting, Julia accepted a teaching position at Wellington Academy secured through her own merits and interview performance, though she suspected Adams' glowing reference hadn't hurt. Congratulations, Professor Adams, Adam said, presenting her with a bouquet of lilies when she shared the news. I'm hardly a professor, Julia laughed, just a high school English teacher. A brilliant one, Adam corrected her, who changed my son's life and mine. That evening, as they walked along the beach near his home, Adam stopped suddenly, turning to face her. Julia, he began, his expression serious. These past months have been the happiest I've known since Catherine died. You've brought joy back into our home, purpose back into Tyler's education, and love back into my heart when I thought that part of me was gone forever. Julia's breath caught as Adam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. I'm not asking because of your new job or because of Tyler or for any reason except this. I love you and I want to build a life with you. He opened the box to reveal a stunning sapphire ring. Julia Adams, will you marry me? Tears welled in Julia's eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Adam slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of happiness. They were married the following spring in the garden where they'd first begun to fall in love. Tyler served as best man, delivering a speech that had the guests alternating between laughter and tears. My mom used to say that books have the power to change lives, he concluded, raising his glass. I never really got what she meant until Julia showed up with her satchel full of books and her different way of looking at things. She changed my life by helping me find my voice. She changed my dad's life by helping him find his heart again. So here's to Julia, the best teacher, the best stepmom, and the best thing that's happened to our family. As Julia and Adam danced under the stars that night, she marveled at how a desperate phone call on a dark day had led her to this moment, to love, to family, to belonging. Happy. Adam murmured, holding her close. Beyond words, Julia replied, resting her head against his chest, and that's saying something for an English teacher. Adam laughed, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her ear. I love you, Mrs. Elliot, and I love you. Julia looked up at her husband, at the man who had once been just an intimidating name on a paycheck and was now the center of her world. Some stories do have happy endings after all. Not endings, Adam corrected her gently. New chapters. And as they continued to dance, surrounded by friends, family, and the sun who had brought them together, Julia knew this was true. Their story wasn't ending, it was just beginning.